All right, so we're here this evening with Brian Taylor from the North and South Rivers Watershed Association. And we talk about weathering the drought, changing rain patterns in Massachusetts. Thank you so much for being here, Brian, and sharing this information with our EnviroCon.
Yeah, thanks, Britta. I'm happy to be here and excited to talk about this ever-pressing issue.
Okay, your turn.
All right, I will go ahead and I think it says I'm disabled. I'm a participant. Oh, there we go. Thank you. All right, let me go ahead and go through the motions here. All right. Great. I think that we are sharing. All right. Great. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Brian Taylor, and I am the educator with the North and South Rivers Watershed Association. We're happy to be celebrating our 50th anniversary this year of protecting our waters and our land and everything in between. So on behalf of the organization, I'll also be presenting as part of the WaterSmart South Shore program, which is a partnership of 12 different towns within the South Shore area, helping promote water conservation, protection, and education. So we do a lot of work in the schools and in the community, both advocacy and education in regards to water and how important it is for us and for animals and for the future. So I'll go ahead and jump right into it. I would start this off with a little joke about droughts, but it is rather dry humor, so I think I'll forego that. As with the state in regards to droughts, right here are the 6 indices that Massachusetts uses to gauge certain drought levels or, sort of call, announce a drought and what level it is. So obviously precipitation, stream flow, groundwater, lakes and impoundments, like also known as reservoirs, and the fire, the KBDI fire danger, the Kelch-Byron drought index that will be used by the state to determine whether there is a fire risk, and of course crop moisture. So many different factors that go into gauging what a drought is. All right, so we're going to go back in time a couple months to back when we were in the midst of a pretty significant drought event going on. So of course, when talking about droughts, drought basically is a look back when it comes to trying to mitigate or deter from droughts happening. It's really always when we are in one. It's backcasting basically rather than forecasting. So we're always working, we're always trying to mitigate and implement drought, mitigate for drought and implement restrictions when it's already happening. So what really needs to happen is getting better at predicting these and making changes to do so, which we'll talk about more towards the end. But proactivity is really the most important part about helping with drought. So here we can see total, this is back in July, total precipitation in inches. You can see that the zones in the red, large chunk of southeastern Massachusetts there in the Cape and Islands is very low in terms of the precipitation that they should be getting. I believe roughly around 3 inches or so. I'm no hydrologist, but we certainly should have been well above that level. And then on the right side, you can see the departure from normal in inches. So under what we should have been at that time certainly is very, obviously you can make the 2 connections between the 2 graphs for that particular time. So like I said, this is in July, and this drought lasted, well, the state actually announced that we were in the drought in August 12th. On August 12th, it was announced for the statewide And but obviously the effects were already in motion, and the effects from this drought that had happened, even though I know it's interesting to be ironic to be talking about a drought right now, because where I am, it's just absolutely pouring outside right now. But regardless, the effects from this summer's drought and into fall will be felt, as many scientists say, well into 2021. And we'll talk a little bit about what it is going forward. So temperature departure from normal also plays a major role. And in July, you can see here that it was a very warm and dry month. Some of the statistics there. And this is, of course, a pretty long period from 1895 to now is when this data has been collaborated to put together these statistics. So it was the second hottest July on record between 1895 and 2020, which is pretty substantial. And we'll talk about why this has to do with the drought as well. All right. So in Massachusetts, we have 4 levels here. Well, actually 5 levels. Level 0, normal condition, and then 1, mild drought. Level 2, significant drought. Level 3, critical drought, and then level 4, an emergency drought. And like I said, drought restrictions are put into place when it's too late. However, droughts do shed light on our mismanagement with our relationship with water. Much like flooding sheds lights on how we manage water and stormwater within a watershed, droughts really get us to think about ways in which we are using our water improperly. So there is a silver lining that can come out of this, but it is unfortunate that this does happen, and it can cause issues on so many different levels. And so let's move forward a little bit. So this is back in July 1, before the state had implemented the statewide drought was announced. But this was listing us as in a level 1, a mild drought. But then going forward, so then after that, in August, then we were at level 2, and some of the parts of the state were in level 3. And then this is the latest update from October 1st, which has most of the southeast area where the North and South Rivers watershed is still level 2. And then most of the rest of the state is in a level 1. So it's still very, very dry. The effects are still being felt. So these are some pictures taken from around our watershed, again, over summer when the effects were very apparent. And so much like many rivers and streams in Massachusetts or in New England have been impounded with dams. And so one thing that our organization has been doing a lot of and pushing a lot for is the removal of a lot of the old defunct, broken, or no longer needed dams throughout the watershed. For many reasons, which I, for the sake of time, will not go into all of them, but fish passage, natural stream flow, river ecology are just a number of things that these dams really affect quite negatively, and a lot of these dams have no longer serve any purpose. So when it comes to drying conditions, the dams will actually aggravate a lot of the effects of these dams, that some negative effects that they had already. And so when we impound that water or use that water for other things, it really depletes the natural stream flow on top of then a drought condition. So here we can see the Jones River down in Kingston, and the First Herion Brook there in Situate, both way below levels that they should be. Now there is still a little bit of water going through there, but certainly I would not like to be a fish trying to make my way up or down those, or live in that. And so the Jones River in Kingston, actually the Silver Lake is the headwaters of the Jones River, and a lot there are pumping wells, pumps that will take water out to Brockton. That's their water supply. And so this is already and First Herion Brook has a number of wells for Norwell around in the area, Hingham as well. So these are already pretty influenced water systems that have a lot of straws at them. And so already, something that we are watching closely and monitoring. A couple more. Third Herringbrook in Norwell, another tributary of the North River. And you can see it's almost just completely dry there. And then another Jack Straw Brook in Westboro right there. So again, these are in July and August when these pictures are taken, but at a time when these rivers should be flowing. So here is a couple examples of some streams. So this is all, you can go online and find this information. This is from the USGS. If you just type in a particular river or a stream, a lot of streams around here will have US Geological Survey data, which is being uploaded daily. And so this one on the left is the Indian Head River in Hanover, and then there's also the Weir River in Hingham. And so these are again taken from back in, well, you can see the time span there. It's pretty much through summer from June through August. And the blue line is the current gauge of discharge of water going through that particular site. And this is cubic feet per second is the frame that we're using here. And then you can see the little triangles in there, the mean daily statistics. So I think it's around 53 years for the Indian Head, and then the past 9 years of data. And you can see sort of where the average is, the median. And you can see pretty much every time, aside from a couple of spikes where there was a storm event, you can see that it is pretty, the majority of it was below where it should have been. And in fact, there's a couple points where it gets to a very, very, very low level, unseasonably low on both of these systems. So you can see there's a point where it gets very near almost zero, especially right there on the Weir River towards the end, where there's almost no discharge coming out of that particular site. So again, you can look up other places around, whether, whichever river, not all of them, but a lot of them do at specific sites, and then you can monitor that. And so again, there are spikes in here where the water goes back up to at or above median, but then droops back down. And these bigger rain events, like, one that we might be getting now, are just a little bit of what we should have been getting more of, spread out through a longer period of time. The reason that this drought over the summer was very eye-opening was that it happened so fast. It's what they called a flash drought, and there was a drought of similar levels back in the end of 2016, but it happened over a longer period of time. It took longer to happen. Its onset was longer, and it was more gradual. Whereas this happened so fast, all of a sudden the rain just stopped, and our groundwater levels started to go down. Our wells started to go dry. Our reservoirs started to go way, way down, and we started to have pretty remarkable algal blooms throughout, and we had streams, running dry in places where we didn't normally see that. So it was a very dramatic event. Which is what really, brought this to attention. And again, the drought shed light on the situations that we've caused ourselves and causes us to react. But, we really need to push for more, proactive ways to mitigate this. So here is a more recent, this is of November. So the one on the left is from November on the Indian Head River in Hanover. And you can see still, once again, there's some ups and downs, but the majority is below the median. And then the one on the right is from October to November, where you can see there at the beginning of October, before we started to get some of these upticks, it was very, very low. Now you can see the trend, the median trend is supposed to start going up, which we do, but still, we're still well below where we should have been, or where we should be. All right, these are two very short video clips, but I don't think I can click on them. They're only about 3 seconds a piece. What it is unfortunately, it's a fish just kind of flopping around. The one on the left, the fish is gasping for air. These are taken by, I believe, from the DMF, the Division of Marine Fisheries, when they were at a site over, I think it was in August. And unfortunately, there was, fish just with no water there. It was just mud. So obviously, pulling out heartstrings to show what the effects are of a drought, which unfortunately a lot of it can be linked back to our actions. So, all right. So what does this mean? So again, over the summer, all of Massachusetts was put into, and this is on the mass.gov, and you can go in fact, I think the next slide I have a current, no, in a couple slides I have the current one of right now. But so level 2, what does this mean? So rain level, precipitation well below normal for over 2 months. Streams very low, near and extreme lows, as we've been seeing. The increased risk for fire and a strain on some water supplies. So obviously, it's not good, not good. And then, however, there are some things that we can do, and I'll talk more about this at the end. Minimize our overall water usage, limit outdoor watering to handheld hoses or watering cans. To be done only after 5 because of evaporation and as well as transpiration. And then temporarily limit installation of new landscapes or plants. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, because there are some things that you can do that actually have more positive effects too. But this is the state giving us recommendations. Again, these are only recommendations. The state actually has no power to require anyone to follow this. The water restrictions that are put into effect are by towns, and I'm sure everyone has seen going across borders between 2 towns, welcome to, such and such town, water restrictions are in effect. The towns can set those. And so it is up to the towns to set those and enforce those. The state cannot do that. So this next slide shows the states as of August 10th that had these restrictions in effect during the major drought. So you can see there's different levels of restrictions going on there and throughout. Now, interestingly enough, you can see the blue line through there is areas within the MWRA. So that is the water that is coming from the Quabbin Reservoir. And you can see very minimal restrictions within there because the Quabbin actually has 5 years worth of water supply ready to go. So they're obviously pretty flush with water, but that's sort of an interesting story there in comparison to smaller, other towns which well for their, or a reservoir for their own water. And so there is a website called CocoRaz, which if anyone wants to try to guess what that stands for, which I had to when I first heard it. So it's the Community Collaborative for Rain, Hail, and Snow. And this is a great way, especially, for schools, or if you're just interested, it's updated. It pretty much definitely daily, if not pretty quickly throughout the day of rainfall or snowfall, or snow, or hail or sleet and all that. So it will put together the totals for that day, and you can adjust it to show you averages and totals throughout, a range, or for that particular day. And you can see the little bit area within our watershed here. And this is in November. So I believe that the unit here is in inches, and you can see they have different sites where they would have a rain gauge of some sort and collect the numbers. So you can do this, it has this for the entire country. So it's pretty interesting to go through and check and see. Back in the summer, there were these values were incredibly low and way below. So you can stay up to date with rain, fall totals, or precipitation totals within your area. And then obviously here is a graph from the same site, which shows between March and September, well below the 30-year average. And this has different daily precipitation totals. So you can see the different levels that go into each month's precipitation total. and still very low in comparison. All right, this is on NOAA's website, and you can see this is a highlight this is the current, or the latest, I should say, highlight of significant United States climatic anomalies and events. And then you can see there in New England, it has drought persisted across New England, resulting in water restrictions and dry wells. So the drought here was notable enough for NOAA to put it on some of the list of biggest things that have happened throughout that particular month or a frame of time frame. So including things like hurricanes and things like that. All right, so obviously when we talk about droughts, we can't forego talking about climate change. So as most of the scientific community has been saying, climate change, in short, will cause drier dries and wetter wets. This is a great way of thinking about and sort of conceptualizing how that will work. Drier dries and wetter wets. So experience longer terms of dryness and longer periods, more intense storms. And the intensity will be more intense as well. More extremes, warmer, hotter periods, colder periods, sort of like the Goldilocks syndrome is what they say. We'll rarely be right in the middle. We'll either be too hot or too cold, or too dry or too wet for unseasonably longer periods of time. So a couple, we had our executive director attended National Climate Assessment of the Water Resources talk, and these were some points that were taken from that. Climate change will challenge the reliability of our water supplies in some areas. Like I said earlier, these droughts really challenge us to think about our relationship with water and how we can do to change that. And climate change certainly will as well. Much of our infrastructure here in Massachusetts is at least 50 years old. And so climate-related disruptions will only exacerbate existing issues with aging infrastructure. This may be a great time to start updating and thinking about a more sustainable and more drought or climate change ready infrastructure when it comes to all the infrastructure that goes into to bringing us water or dealing with our water both to and from where we live and everywhere else. So it's kind of an interesting way to think about it, but certainly might be a good time to start thinking about how we can change how we use our water and for what. As well as updating our dated infrastructure. So here's another one. If future potable water supplies are expected to be adequate to meet future demand on average, which is the key word, across the Northeast. But the number of watersheds where demand exceeds supply is projected to increase under most climate change scenarios. So the key word there is on average. So obviously, this is good. We should have enough potable, drinkable water supplies to be adequate enough to meet future demand on average. But of course, average, has sort of is confined to a specific area. Obviously, 2020 certainly hasn't been an average year, and so we want to stay within that good zone, that average area. But any stray out of it can cause some serious problems. So that with the sort of looming, if not already here, climate change scenarios could really cause some further issues. All right. So like I said, the state doesn't, the state can only provide recommendations. The state really can't enforce and require people to abide by certain water restrictions, but the towns do. And this is taken from Situate here within the North River watershed, and which does have some water restrictions, different levels that they will put in place. And so I believe these started around 2011 was when the water restrictions started to really become implemented. And so you can see the darker line there. I don't know if you can, this line right here on top is prior to any irrigation restrictions. So this is all about lawn watering, which is the #1 usage of water within our watershed is irrigation for lawns. And so you can see that it was, and then on the side is the million gallons per day is the unit there. So at the peak, which is in July, right in the summer, it is a little about almost probably actually right on about 2.5 million gallons per day used for lawns. And then it drops way off in the spring, winter, and fall. And so there is a dotted line in there, which is post implementing some irrigation restrictions through 2011, 2013. And you can see it did bring down that peak there quite substantially with a net difference, a savings of 380,000 gallons per day, which is pretty substantial. And so obviously that is just one town making, putting in these regulations to try to save a little bit of water, and it certainly did. And so that is just one step that towns can do on a more local level to really make a difference and change. So something that you all can do at home is, and this is on our website, if you just type in WaterSmart or NSRWA, how much water do you use? You'll see it right there on our website. You can actually figure out how much water you use and per day. So the state of Massachusetts recommends that we use no more than 65 gallons per person per day. So 65 gallons, does that seem like a lot? Does it seem like a little? That's just what they recommend. Imagine 65 milk jugs full of water per day. It seems like quite a lot. Well, it does go pretty quickly. And so at home, what you can do, and this is a really fun project to do with kids or with the family, is take your water bill, and some of them, I believe they actually provide it. Some of them will have the unit used in gallons. Some of them will do cubic feet. If it's in cubic feet, you can just go online and Google, 7,000 cubic feet equals gallons, and it'll do the math for you. And so, so then you can convert it into gallons. Type in total gallons consumed, divide it by the number of days in the billing cycle. I believe typically it's around 90. It'll say in there. And so divide it by the days in the billing cycle, and then divide that number by the number of people in your household. And that will give you the gallons used, the average amount of gallons used per person per day. Split evenly, of course. So maybe you have someone that uses a little bit more water but that will give you a good number. So you can see where you are around the 65, which this Massachusetts standard is on a, I believe that's a pretty sustainable figure. But you can kind of see where you are in that. And it also might help you think about ways that you can save or generate the discussion at home about how you could save a few gallons here and there. Of course, it saves money, and it is really a positive thing on so many other fronts as well. So there's many different strategies that people can use to save water at home, many of which are on our website. And I think actually we might just go into a couple here. All right. Like I said, the #1 use of water here in our watershed is on lawns for irrigation. So with these remote the automated sprinkler systems, we find to be the biggest offender. Watering 1 inch worth of water on a 1 acre yard consumes about 26 gallons of water per, for that one time, if you want to water 1 inch of water there. And that is more than a standard size swimming pool. So 26,000 gallons of water. And those times that you see that house with all those sprinklers going for a few hours, I mean, that really is adding up. There are some situations here in and around the watershed where we have seen certain households use hundreds of thousands of gallons in a day. So it's really, and this is not like, oh, it's different water. It's, that water is okay. No, the water coming out of there is grade A drinking water. I mean, the water that we use to survive off of, to cook with, to drink, that is fresh, pure, clean drinking water. So it's a big deal. That's a lot. So that certainly doesn't help when we have wells drying out in certain places or riverbeds drying, because of course, as I'm sure many of us are aware, it's not like groundwater or river water. It's all connected. And when we have a water table, the groundwater that's being lowered because of overusage and drought, that brings it down for everyone. That brings it down for the streams. That brings it down from the reservoirs. That brings it down in the ponds. That brings it down in the lakes. That brings it down in the watershed, and it brings it down for all of us. So, similar to that, if there's a house or an area that has their own well, they're on their own well water. It's still just another straw going down to that same, that same groundwater that towns have pumps coming out of that we all need. So it's all connected. And when we take from one, we'll take from the other. So it all goes down. And so many other factors will be affected by that. All right. Another great way, especially obviously now, it's been pretty warm. And so some of our lawns might still be, if you still have a lawn, some of our lawns might still be pretty green right now. But especially in the summertime, take the pledge to not water your lawn, to save water for people, for firefighting, and for wildlife. Take the pledge with us. And tag 10 of your friends to do the same. So this is something that we have going on through the Water Smart South Shore program. More information on our website in regards to this, but brown is the new green, and join the movement to conserve. In the summertime, you might see that house that's got that sort of, that crispier, browner looking lawn. They've taken the pledge, and they're saving water for the firefighting, the wildlife, as well as for everybody. So it all starts with one, and then it can multiply. So it's not like saving water. We have to do something about these big, a company that's taking too much water for Bali. Yes, there's a lot of big issues out there, but change starts with everyone. It's all the little things that can add up to big positive change. So this is a great way to start if you're looking to make a little bit of difference. This is a really good one. And so plus in the summer when it's hot and dry, your grass will turn brown. It'll come back later in the season anyway. However, I would take this one step further, and maybe you don't need this giant lawn of grass. Maybe you want sort of a nice diverse mix of native species, or do a rain garden. So not only are you reducing runoff, but you're actually recharging groundwater. So these rain gardens are naturally a way for the water to seep into the soil rather than running off the top like they do with lawns. So we think of runoff as water flowing through parking lots and through streets, collecting all that debris and all that trash and garbage and oil and stuff, and flowing into our nearest water body, river or pond or something like that. Well, yes, that is runoff, but also with lawns, they're so hard packed. They're all made up of pretty much just one species of grass and very, very hard packed. And water has a tendency to pool up on the top and also run off across the top of lawns, collecting with it all that fertilizer that we put on it. So again, maybe we need to start rethinking about how we interact with our front yards. Do they need to be all that? Can they be a nice mix of wildflowers? So again, more information we actually have a greenscapes program, which you can find a lot more information on what species to plant and all that's at our website, and check it out. So little info there. And then lastly, water balance policy. A lot of towns are implementing this, where any new development will have to, so it's a gallon for gallon basically of water in, water out. New development might be adding some need for water, but they are going to do something that when they design or implement their new construction or development, they will do something to offset their new need, new additional need for water by doing something to help give back more water, whether it is implementing new, low flow or more water efficient technology, or providing money or funds to support a more local water saving initiative. So there's some creative ways that some companies have been going about trying to mitigate their impact in a positive way to net zero. And actually, there have been some organizations that have actually been doing 1 for 2. So for every gallon they will need, they actually will find a way to make up for and give back 2 gallons. So but net zero is really a more sustainable way, as we are increasing demand rapidly on an infrastructure or a water system that was designed 50 years ago, before we really had a good grasp on how quickly we can be depleting our water resources, which of course, as we all know, are incredibly important. So that is the end of the presentation. I'm going through some of my notes to make sure I hit on all the points that I wanted to talk about. I would be happy if there's any questions at this time. Otherwise, the organization is always open to talking with people and discussing with people any ways to help save water at home, any advice when it comes to rain garden or anything like that, as well as some of our other programs too. So we definitely, advocacy and education are our biggest ways to communicate with people about ways to help save, conserve, protect their water for us for now and for the future. So with that, thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over to Britta, unless anybody has any questions.
Thanks, Brian. That was cool. At this point, Justin's still here, and I'm letting you talk, Justin, so feel free to just chime in. I went and grabbed my water bill while you were talking, and I did my math, and I'm at 48.5 gallons per day. That was in the spring though, before it got hot. So I don't know, I'll have to find my summer bill and see.
Yeah,
you have a lot of rain barrels, but wow. And I think I don't use a lot of water because
it goes quickly, and we really don't even think about it. And that's half the battle, is just being conscious about it. So, but that's cool that you did. And believe me, I've heard worse numbers than that, and that still is below the average. So that's good. That's really good. But even if someone at home were to calculate a number that is way up there, that's just the starting point. That starts the discussion to then bring it down. You brought up rain barrels. That is great. Any way to any of those small steps over time will add. Maybe next year we'll build a rain garden. The year after that we'll get a rain barrel so we can water the rain garden. Even though if you plant native species, they are pretty tolerant to drought conditions. Native species have a great way of adapting, or have adapted to this climate. So that's cool that you did. I'm glad that you did.
I was curious. I have another question.
Oh, yeah.
All these things I wrote down while you're talking. The map that showed which towns ended up with water restrictions in effect and had the MWR, that one right there. I'm curious. I'm noticing there's some orange towns just south of the Quabbin.
Yeah.
And that stood out to me. I don't know a whole lot about where the rest of that water comes from or goes to, but it's kind of interesting that you pointed out that the MWRA towns did not end up with water restrictions.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Yep, you're absolutely right. And I'm not, I'm not the expert on this, but I do believe that those towns that are underneath the Quabbin and Orange don't get the water from the old water body that they may share boundaries with. The ones in blue are the ones that do. So it is pretty interesting how we're shipping water all over the place. And obviously people need water and communities need water, but the Boston area is pretty flush with water, and there are places very near that don't have that. So it really challenges us to think about where our water is going, and is we all need it. And so another great point to your point is also us thinking about obviously bottled water. It comes up all the time, but we're taking water. This is shipping water 100 miles or so. Bottled water companies are taking water out of someone else's watershed and shipping them all over the world, and that water won't come back. This water is somewhat local, even though it's a few watersheds away. But there is areas they're having their water taken out of their watershed, going elsewhere that will never come back. So just another reason why bottled water is certainly not a very sustainable practice in terms of a watershed standpoint. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Definitely. I don't have my marathon water bottle here to put on camera.
All right.
That's our prize these days. Instead of a medal, you get a water bottle. Yay. Justin, do you have any questions?
Thanks
for listening, Justin. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. That was very good. I appreciate that. I just thought it was interesting that when you look at the map of the most severe areas for drought, a lot of those are coastal. And that's almost kind of counterintuitive there for what I think you would expect in a typical year weather-wise. I mean, I'm in Worcester County, kind of right smack in the middle. So we were kind of included in this as well. I could see some of the darker cranberry colors kind of over in our area, but it's surprising to see is that Barnstable County and Plymouth County down there that are really quite dry despite an obvious marine influence on the weather there. And it's interesting to see that maybe on the small scale climate change is playing a big role there, and maybe an under-evaluated role there also.
Yeah, then that's a really good point. In fact, I think when the state first started to implement the restrictions this year, announcing the different categories of drought, I think the Southeast Massachusetts was delayed. Like they didn't announce it right. Like the rest of Massachusetts was, and I'll have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it was that those areas were announced later, like the Cape and the Islands, where it was some delay, but it was the worst of the drought was happening down there at the time. So you would think, even like right now, the big storms are coming through this neck of the woods. I'm down here in Plymouth right now, and but still, maybe it has to do with it's very developed down here. That's a really good point, and it certainly is a little counterintuitive, but it's still a very real issue. I guess no matter where you are here, you can still be affected. That's a good point. Yeah.
Cool. I was just thinking we had a webinar last week with Dominique Pavlon, who is the Mass GIS specialist with EEA, and she was showing us some climate projections in the map that she's made for Envirothon teams to work with. And in terms of temperature, the coastal regions were not going to have as many over 95-degree days as central and western Mass. And it'd be a less change at any rate in the number of those days. But it definitely did seem like rainfall was an issue this summer, more so than the coastal area, as Justin was saying.
Definitely. Yeah. And I've heard some interesting research too, especially out of UMass Amherst, about how temperature may not be as a major of a factor as we once thought, but maybe more a reaction to watering more, things like that, or also how higher temperatures typically come with higher pressure systems, lower precipitation levels. So, but there was some, there's been a lot more research coming out that's really getting into some of these concepts that we've always thought of, that there may be some many other factors that go into rather than just temperature. So it's interesting. It's even just when I was prepared for this presentation, I was coming across a lot of good articles and things to really challenging us to. Just like all of it, we're always learning something new every time. And when it comes to the environmental, the climate, ecology, there's always something. Unfortunately, a lot of things that we might not want to know, but it's always learning something new. And I guess that's a good thing.
All right, Justin, you got anything else?
No, just thank you very much for your time, Brian. That was very good.
Yeah,
appreciate it, Justin.
ditto.
Thank you.
We really,
Thank you.
really appreciate all this, and
Thanks very
let's
much.
hope it keeps raining.
Absolutely, yeah, keep right. Yeah, that'll be great. And although with the droughts, it can be very dry, and that rain might not be able to soak in as quickly if would be more of a consistent precipitation cycle. So, but that's okay. We'll take it. We'll take it. And like I said, Britta, if you're recorded this, share it. If anyone wants to contact us, you can feel free to send them my email for any questions, or they can just go to info@nsrwa.org and send any questions there as well. So I'd be happy to pass that along. If I can't answer it, then I'd pass it on to the further experts of the organization.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brian, and people who are here today, and we'll catch you in the future. Take care.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good one, Britta.